Druids in Baldur's Gate 3 can be a very diverse class, and in this video, we're going to combine the abilities of both the Druid and the Paladin to create a wild experience, no pun intended here. We'll be using the might of the Shillelagh cantrip to dual-wield torches and quarterstaves, amplifying them with smites to create a unique and destructive character. Shillelagh converts our damage from strength-based to wisdom-based, so we can have fun with all the many staves or staves in the game that it has to offer us. Also gives us a lot of early game strength, the hardest part of the game, with weapons that immediately deal fire and necrotic damage from our SPORE Druid subclass. Now, this is your first time on my channel. The way I do things is by uploading the knowledge in my videos. So with that being said, this build's leveling split is pretty straightforward. We'll take 4 levels of SPORE Druid and then 8 levels of either Ancient's Paladin for some defensive gameplay or Vengeance Paladin to really ramp up or amp up the damage via auto advantage rolls on hits. It's entirely up to you. Now, you can respec this build around level 5 to get extra attack online quicker, and depending on what difficulty and challenge you're approaching, that's the recommended route. But otherwise, this is a class that is very strong early game and only gets stronger as you get into some of the things in the late game. But if that's all you wanted to know, then please feel free to shut the video down and get back to enjoying your masquerade in Baldur's Gate 3. You can navigate to any part of the video that interests you the most using the chapters about the timeline and the description. And if you found this video helpful, please don't forget to leave a comment, like, and or subscribe. Each one of those things is a great way to support the channel, and it's entirely free. Lastly, check out the link to my Twitch below, where I stream this game and plenty of other ones every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. But let's get started here on my favorite Druid build right now in Baldur's Gate 3. Loading into the game, let's make a decision on what race to choose. Now, of course, this is a single-player narrative game. Don't worry about min-max anything. Just choose whatever the fuck you want. You spent your money on your game, so you enjoy it how you want. There are really no races that are truly going to benefit in this build more than any other ones. Ones that are always standout options for me are the Drow, because they're like my favorite race. Half-Orc, which gives savage attacks. When you land a critical hit with a melee weapon, you deal an extra dice of weapon damage. Since we are going to be a melee character, this is really nice. And also, of course, is relentless endurance. So if you reach 0 hit points, you regain 1 hit point instead of becoming downed. It's just a nice way to make a very tanky character. And to have a Druid Paladin, it's a really fun image. I like it. Dragonborn gets tons of breath attacks, which are really cool, which now do scale with your level depending on what you're doing, and it's a unique way to play. The Gith are always really strong with their capabilities of astral knowledge to give them proficiency in all skills of a chosen ability. So for example here, if I want, say, all the conversational skills to have proficiency in them, I could use my astral knowledge to gain proficiency in all charisma skills. Other good ones are, of course, Halfling for stuff like Brave and for Lucky, because Lucky is just an amazing thing. So when you roll a 1 for an attack roll, ability check, and or saving throw, you can re-roll the die and misuse a new roll. So go with whatever makes sense for you and your character and how you want to play. Your first option here is going to be Druid. That is going to be the big focus here on the character. Now for our cantrip, the most important thing is that we get Shillelagh. Your staff or club becomes magical. It deals 4 to 11 bludgeoning damage, and it uses your spellcasting ability for attack rolls. Our spellcasting ability will be Wisdom because we're a Druid. Oh, well, it's going to use the spellcasting ability of what we cast this on, which would be our Druid, which would be Wisdom. What's nice here is that this is a bonus action. So if you forget to cast this before going into an actual fight, you can just simply cast it in the middle of the fight, and it's a simple bonus action, and then you can still use your primary action to fight. It's a real awesome capability that we're going to be taking advantage of. For our secondary here, Thorn Whip is pretty cool actually, because it pulls creatures closer to you, so you can actually hit them with your weapons. But also Guidance is really good. It just depends on what your party is going to be made up of. If you have other characters that can have Guidance, go with Thorn Whip. It's unique to the Druid, so have some fun with it. For your background, like I always say, create a little background for your character. This doesn't need to be a huge roleplay option, but this kind of helps you get into the game a little bit more and helps you push through maybe decisions you would otherwise have analysis paralysis over, because you're looking at, well, what's the best option? The best option is whatever fits the background and the roleplay for your character. Maybe you're, of course, as I always like to say, you are some sort of noble son who has eschewed the Paladin path and joined into the SPORE Druids. Or maybe you're an Outlander who was once a Druid druid and has joined a paladin household. Whatever it is, whatever makes sense for you and the character you want to create, go ahead and do it. But if you do want a min-max option, I always recommend a guild artisan because it gives us both proficiency in insight and persuasion, which are always nice to have, especially since persuasion and insight are very crucial to a lot of things in the game. For our for our skills, go with whatever makes sense for you. Since we have insight and persuasion already taken care of, it's very nice for this build. But always like to make sure if this is your face character, meaning the main character that's going to interact with the majority of the things in the game, just go ahead and choose things that I would choose one conversational skill: deception, intimidation, or persuasion. In this case, we already have persuasion. And then these other two, use them as you see fit. Perception and survival are pretty good ones. Animal handling is not necessarily crucial because of the fact that if you use speak with animals, then you use your conversational skills to talk with animals. If you don't use the spell speak with animals, then you use animal handling as a way to converse with animals. It's one of those skills that I think in all the times that I play druids or rangers, I always just use speak with animals and I never end up using this. So it always is kind of a letdown. But I'd go with something like nature to kind of fall into the role play of this character, and probably something like perception to help me out with well, spotting hidden details, of course, but also I like it when it comes to conversation. Insight and conversation, insight and perception sometimes can help out with conversations. So those are our skills. And lastly, we'll talk about our spells before getting to abilities. This build is not so much about spell casting, more so as it is about using your spells for smites. So use whatever spells are going to fit the character and what they're going to fit the party you have kind of set up for yourself. So right now, I'd probably go with something like, Good Berry is actually really strong. It's a really strong capability. Entangle is really nice because if you entangle them, affected entity can't move. Attack rolls against it have advantage, while its attack rolls and dexterity saving throws have disadvantage. And it's worth noting, though, that this is a concentration ability. So if you choose this, just know if you get hit, you have a chance to lose it. But Thunderwave is another really good one because you're going to be up close and personal anyway. And you can go with something like Speak with Animals, which is a ritual spell, or Longstrider, which is a ritual spell. Ritual spells mean you can cast it and it doesn't take up a spell slot and it will last for until a long rest. So great ways to manipulate the game. Another good one too is create or destroy water, so that you can actually create watery substances to complement anyone that's casting any thunder or lightning magic, because it will anything that's wet will get amplified damage on those surfaces. So those are our spells. We've talked about everything else. Let's go into abilities. So our ability scores are going to be interesting. We will respec eventually and we will swap these ability scores out. But right now, we're going to focus on wisdom because the next handful of levels are solely wisdom based. We're not going to be pulling any benefits from Paladin or Charisma into this character just yet. And since we are going to be focusing entirely on wisdom and Shillelagh, we don't need any strength, but we do need dexterity, and we're going to need constitution. We're going to need tons of wisdom, and then a little bit of charisma. Let's go ahead now, assign our +2 and +1s. +2 into charisma, +1 into wisdom. We're going to still have 3 points, which we could put over into whatever you really want here. Actually, it probably makes more sense to do something like this. There we go. So now we've got 16 constitution, 16 wisdom, 12 charisma, and 14 dexterity. This allows us to have a good armor save with our dexterity, as well as good initiative. With our constitution, we're going to be able to maintain any concentration spells. We're going to have a good amount of health. And then our wisdom is going to be the thing that actually amplifies our damage, as well as helps us out with all of our spells. 12 charisma just allows us to do any kind of conversational skills or conversational things a lot better in this experience. So here is your initial spread. We'll respec this later in the game. Swapping over to my... It's not a blood elf, it's a wood elf. We're going to go through the leveling progression of this character. So level 2, we're going to go into Druid, of course, and we're going to swap over to the Circle of Spores. The big thing here with Circle of Spores are our 2 abilities. Halo of Spores, unleash a cloud of necrotic spores upon our target. This uses a reaction, so that just gives us a 1d4. And then Symbiotic Entity, gain 8 temp hit points and deal an additional 1 to 6 necrotic damage while you have them. So now, every time we use Symbiotic Entity, which lasts until long rest or until our temp hit points go away, we have the capability to have necrotic damage on our weapons. It's a great way to add another damage profile to our torches, which already have an initial damage profile that has fire. It's going to be a lot of fun. Just trust me. So that's how we're going to go. And of course, for spells, I'm going to say this throughout this entire video, just choose whatever spells you want, since the focus for our spells will eventually become smites. So on to level 3. We will have access to tons of other abilities. Now, there's another way you can go about this. You can use Flame Blade. Conjure a Flaming Scimitar in your hand that deals 3 to 18 fire damage and sheds light in a 10-foot radius and dim light in a 20-foot radius. The blade can be unequipped and equipped again, but has to stay on the spellcaster's person. So if you want, you can use Flame Blade in this build. It's a really cool way to approach things. On top of it, it just adds a whole nother profile of damage into the mix. But it's going to come around to our discussion in level 4, and it's about dual wielding. So I would say this is definitely going to be your mileage may vary. Flame Blade or dual wielding staves, dual wielding torches. It's going to come down to you as the player, and I'll talk about that in a second here. But other level 2 abilities are great. Our Spike Growth, it is a concentration capability, so keep that in mind. Same thing here with Hold Person, it is a concentration. Heat Metal is really nice too, also a concentration capability, and then Enhance ability. Guess what? You guessed it, it's concentration. Bark Skin, also concentration, but it's a nice increase to your AC. All sorts of fun things that you can choose from. Go ahead and choose whatever makes sense for the build and what you are doing with your entire party. Into level 4, we're going to stop here, but we're going to get a Wild Shape Deep Growth, Rothopotamus, whatever it is. But it just, again, you're not going to use your Wild Shape charges for that. You're going to be using it for your Halo of Spore stuff. But now let's have a conversation about our feat. Wash them, always wash them, keep them clean. But what I mean is the feats in the game. So some of the feats that we're going to be taking a look at in this build are Savage Attacker, because when making melee weapon attacks, you roll your damage dice twice and use the highest result. Always a really strong one. We're going to be eventually choosing ability improvement, and we're going to focus on wisdom since a lot of our damage is coming from that. It's a really big focus for the build. Remember, higher charisma doesn't necessarily mean better smites. Your smites are dictated off of your paladin level and less so off of your actual, what's it called? Off of your actual charisma, which is nice because we don't have to worry about scaling that feature. The actual the way it works is your weapon deals an additional 2d8 radiant damage, increased by 1d8 damaging when attacking feats or undead, and that spell slot is what's going to amp up the damage of it. So that one, it'll get more damage per spell slot. So charisma is not as big of a focus here, but it is still one. So we'll focus on wisdom for this build. Now the other big one we have to take a look at, and because we only get 3 in this build. You can go with stuff like Alert, which is just really good. It's always a strong option or choice for any build in the game. Lucky is always amazing. Other ones are strong, but Dual Wielder is the big one you need to take a look at. You can use 2-weapon fighting even if your weapons aren't light, and then you gain a +1 bonus to armor class while wielding a melee weapon in each hand. You cannot dual wield 2-handed weapons. So you need to make the decision for yourself. Do you want to strictly use 2 torches throughout the entirety of the game? Then you do not need Dual Wielder. If you want to branch off into using quarterstaves, even using other abilities, even dropping the dual wielding capability and just going with two-handed weapons, then you would not take Dual Wielder. But I'm going to stick with that because it's the character profile I've created for this video and for this character. So I'm going to choose my first level 4 feat to be Dual Wielder. My next one is going to be ability improvement into wisdom. Then after that, it's going to be Savage Attacker. You could also swap these two if you want, if you feel like your wisdom is high enough and you don't really need to jump into it. So it's going to be really, again, dealer's choice. So first one here is going to be Dual Wielder. So into level 5, we have the choice of sticking with Druid or not, but we're not going to in this build. We're going to switch over to Paladin. And I'm only going to switch to Paladin for 1 level. Because I want to get to level 6 before I respec. The reason behind this is I want to still use Shillelagh. If I respec Paladin at level 5, sure, I'll get access to my my capabilities of Paladin, and I'll get smites, and I'll get an extra attack, but I'll lose Shillelagh. So I lose a lot of the damage from this character. So we're going to go Paladin. I'm going to go Oath of Vengeance in this build, but please, by all means, go with Oath of Ancients and Healing Radiance. It's very fun. Whichever one makes sense for you. So Oath of Vengeance gives us Inquisitor's Might, and we'll press Accept. So at this point, we're a cumulative level of level 6, right? So we're going to respec. So let's jump back into Withers and redo all this. So here we have our character in the respec screen for Withers. We swapped over to Paladin so we can get extra attack online. Extra attack is really crucial, especially if you're playing in honor difficulty and higher. Oh, there's no higher, but honor difficulty. Just any difficulty where you actually want to stay contending in melee damage. So you have a choice to make. If you're going through the game and you encounter the hag and you get the hag's hair, you'd put it into wisdom, and instead of 12 dexterity, you would do this. It's up to you and how you approached the game up to this point. You've already dealt with the hag if you're this level. If you did not get the hag's hair, then I would just keep your dexterity at 12. Have 14 constitution, 16 wisdom, and 16 charisma. This just enables you to have 20 overall wisdom by the end of this build. If you go with the hag's hair, it's just going to, of course, be dependent upon how you approach the game. So I'm just going to assume you didn't choose it. This way, kind of, actually, you know what? Maybe for showing damage's sake later in the video, I'll go ahead and do this. I'm going to assume you've chosen the hag's hair. If you goes this setup, it's 12 dex, 16 charisma, or I'm sorry, 16 wisdom otherwise. Now, going through this portion, re-leveling, our fighting style is going to be defense, because that way we're just going to get some additional armor just for simply wearing armor, and we're going to be wearing armor. For our spells, again, we're not really going to focus too much on this because the big thing is our smites. We want damage from our smites. So choose whatever spells make sense for the character and how you're playing the game. And we're just going to quickly push through this because this is what you're going to be doing in your game, of course. Again, doesn't really matter for your spells here. The big thing here, though, we do get is Abjure Enemy, so frighten the enemy, but also Vow of Enmity. Gain advantage on attack rolls against an enemy. You used to be able to cast this on yourself. We'll test to see if you still can, but basically any hard target, you cast this on them, and you get advantage on attack rolls against them. There's a bug that you could cast this on yourself, and you get advantage on all attack rolls against everything else. It was kind of a weird thing. So either way, though, it's still a really strong vow to give you tons of damage. Pushing through into level 3, we choose our, into level 4, we choose our feat. And I'm just going to go with dual wielder to keep our pace that we had before. We're level 5 on a paladin, and now we pick up extra attack. We have access to magic weapon, all the other cool things, but we also get Misty Step and Hold Person as a paladin, which is nice. So we're going to accept this, push to level 6, and you could just finish off Paladin at this point, but I think what's better is because we've talked so much about how Shillelagh is the key to this, right? Because remember, we're just respecking here. We're not re-leveling the entire way through. We're just respecking. We're getting the same stuff that we had before, and now we're back to leveling up for our progression. So we're into level 7 again. We're going to push into Circle of Spores once more, just so that we've got that symbiotic entity. Keeping again, just the same. I'm not choosing any different spells. I'm just kind of seeing whatever's there is fine. Just one thing I do want you to keep in mind though is this thing, this box round stuff. You already know this spell. The spell is a different version of one you already know. You'll have access to both, meaning that I already know this as a paladin. But if I have higher wisdom, I'm going to want to cast it as a wisdom casting character. So adding that here means that it will prioritize casting it as a wisdom character, not as a paladin character. The game should choose the highest roll possible, not the lowest one. It won't just default. We've tested this before, but let's go ahead and just remove that, and we'll go with like Flaming Blade, whatever. We'll push into level 4 with our druid. We'll get another feat, and this time I'm going to go ability improvement, and I'm going to put it into wisdom. Now, of course, if I had Anti-Ethel's hair, I would have 20 wisdom right now. But now that we're at a 5-5 split, we're level 10 right now. We're going to jump back into Paladin. It's confusing, I know, I apologize, but I think this is the best way to approach it. Otherwise, you'll miss out on extra attack until level 9, and that is a level 10, that's a huge loss in your actual power capability throughout the game. Extra attack is a huge power spike for you. But Aura of Protection here, you and nearby allies gain plus bonus to your saving throw. That bonus is based off of our charisma, so now they'll get a +3 to their saving throws. And we have quite a bit of spells to take advantage of. Now we'll keep going up here. We're going to get Relentless Avenger. If you hit an enemy with opportunity attack, your movement speed increases by 15% or 15 feet. Next turn, more spells, and we get our last level into Paladin here, which then we go with Savage Attacker. This is, of course, going to make it so we're going to do more damage in melee. And at less level 2, we don't get anything crazy. Level 9, we get more stuff, but we get our level 4 spell slots. So let's go ahead and press accept here and take a look at what it looks like in the game. So jumping into the game, we've got our character here. He's all over the place. He's dual wielding torches, and we're going to talk about torch options in a little bit here, but you can just use base torches. In fact, that's the point of this build, is just using base torches. I happen to be using a torch that is not a base torch, and it's quite good. So this torch does 1d4 extra necrotic damage as a default of its capabilities as a the Torch of Revocation. And if I just bring up over here, we have our Shadow Lantern here. I should probably actually take this off to reflect better. So these things are great. It's all sorts of nice, right? But let's go ahead and add on Symbiotic Entity. So now our character will do 1d4 and 1d6 with its necrotic damage on these two items. Where is this? There it is. So an additional 1 to 6 damage, and it deals double damage to Halo of Spores. So that necrotic damage, sometimes when it shows it like this, it'll factor in later. And we'll use other forms of damage or other forms of items and stuff like that to add additional damage modifiers here. So these gloves, for example, just bring more fire damage to the table and more other goodness across the board. But we've got plenty of other abilities with Vow of Enmity. We've got our Lay on Hands. We've got the ability to Wild Shape if we so need to. Abjure Enemy. Keep in mind too, Wild Shape just replenishes on a short rest. So the thing that uses Symbiotic Entity and Halo of Spores, it doesn't use that, but Symbiotic Entity is Wild Shape charge. Simply short rest, boom, you get your charges back. We'll have our Aura of Protection, which I should cast now before I forget to later in the game. All of our smites. Our smites, you can see that. Like, look at all those damage stacks right there, right? So 7 to 38, and that usually only shows you one weapon. And we can go all the way up to level 4 with this bad boy. So 10 to 62 with radiant damage. So a lot of damage coming out from just smiting things with torches, which is hilarious in its own regard, which you can also lean into with the luminous armor, whatever it is. Let's now talk about weapons, armor, all that stuff. So usually I show this off in game, but this is my build planner that I'm going to be using. You'll find this linked in the description below. And I feel like this is an easier way to talk about the items that I don't have that I recommend for this build. So the ones that I don't have here, first is going to be the Diadem of Arcane Synergy. When you inflict a condition, gain Arcane Synergy for 2 turns. Arcane Synergy is really nice here because it's going to give us the ability to use our Wisdom modifier on stuff. And on top of it, it really just goes well with how we are approaching this class. Because Arcane Synergy, what it does, weapon attacks deal additional damage equal to the affected entity's spellcasting modifier. So this adds an additional Wisdom modifier onto what we're doing. The Thunderskin Cloak, I have this in the game, but this is the min-max option of all of it. I'll go with that in a sec. Gloves of Dexterity, set the wearer's dexterity score to 18. This helps us combat our low dexterity, so we have better initiative and better AC. Really nice option here. Also gives us +1 to our attack rolls. You can also go with the Gloves of Stormy Clamor, which I do not have. Are they Stormy Clamor? No, it's Gloves of Thundering Sky, which I do not have, unfortunately, but they're a really good stopgap that you can get in lieu of buying the Gloves of Dexterity, which you get in Act 1. Both of those you get in Act 1. Both of those around the monastery, not the Bloodborne Monastery, but around the Creche is where you get them. But the Gloves of Dexterity cost you versus the Gloves of Thunderous, whatever the hell, don't. Thunderous Skies. Now, the Boots of Stormy Clamor here, when the wearer inflicts a condition upon a hostile creature, they inflict 2 turns of reverberation. Another item I don't have, which keys off of that, when the wearer deals damage with a ranged spell attack, which you have plenty of in your repertoire, especially through cantrips, inflict 2 turns of reverberation on the target. Always good. And then the Ring of Spiteful Thunder. When the wearer deals thunder damage to reverberating creatures, it becomes dazed unless it succeeds a Constitution saving throw. So you can see here that we have a lot of ways to deal a lot of really fun damage to stuff with thunder and get reverb onto them and have them become prone. And if they're prone, we get advantage on them, and it's just crit slam fucking stuff. It's so nice. Now, another one I don't have is the Callous Glow Ring. The wearer deals an additional 2 points of radiant damage against creatures that are illuminated, which you will be illuminating things because you're holding torches. So this ring works very good with this early armor, the luminous armor. When the wearer deals radiant damage, they cause a radiant shockwave, which then puts radiant orbs on things, which then reduces their ability to hit you. So it's really nice. You get this right in Act 1, right in the Underdark. And another early helmet that works really well that I unfortunately don't have, that's also in Act 1, right around the same place that you get the other helmet that I have recommended here. My brain just can't remember what it's actually called. Holy Lance Helm. So creatures who miss their attack rolls against the wearer must make a DC 14 dexterity saving throw or take 1d4 radiant damage, which then triggers your Callous Glow Ring, which then triggers your luminous armor. There's just so many layers of punchiness that can be brought into with the radiant damage, and you get that early and you never have to change it if you don't want. If you want to just keep sticking with it, you can. So those are some items that I don't have. The last one here is Cacophony. Thunderous Smite, cast a level 1 spell, but this does thunder damage. So you get this item, these boots, this item and this item, all, and these and this, all in Act 1, and the gloves of Belligerent Skies. Sorry. Thunderous Skies, Belligerent Skies, whatever. When the wearer deals thunder damage, lightning, or radiant damage, inflict 2 turns of reverb. So you don't even need to use thunder. You can still inflict the reverb with these gloves. So you see how much fun we can have with reverb in this build to give you a really early power spike that you could just keep throughout the entirety of the game. Let's go into some items that I do have as alternatives. Now, taking a look at our options for weapons. It's the Torch of Revocation. That's the big ones you're going to get in Act 3. But the nice thing about this build is use any torches you find up until that point. Just have fun with it. Choose a torch, stick with it. There you go. You're pretty much set all the way throughout the game now at this point. Another one is the Shadow Lantern you can go with here. It's versatile. You can conjure a Shadow Lantern Wraith, which is really cool. You get it in Act 2. But also use any other staff if you want to, if you went with the dual wielding route. So I can go ahead and do that. So now I've got a staff in one hand and I've got the torch in another. And there's a lot of really cool staves that you can take advantage of. The Morning Frost here to help out with cold damage. Staff of the Ram is really cool. Once per turn, the blow possibly knocks a foe back 7 feet and stuns them. This has no effect on dragons or huge creatures. The Staff of Interruption for counterspell. Staff of Spell Power to help out with your actual spell damage. If you want to go into necromancy stuff, you have the Staff of Cherished Necromancy. The Staff of Arcane Blessing at the very beginning of the game. There's another staff at the beginning of the game that gives you bonuses when you're using Shillelagh. It will entangle them. You could just have fun, mix and match. Choose a staff and stick with it. Choose torches, stick with them. The reason I like this build is because I think it's so much dealer's choice with so much of your weapons, whereas so many other builds require a specific weapon by the end of the game. And this way you can feel strong early and stay strong throughout the game. When it comes to your armor, let's go through some slots. Not to be confused with the word sluts, which is very easy to confuse with the word slots. Our headpiece is the Helmet of Arcane Acuity. Whenever you deal damage with a weapon attack, you gain Arcane Acuity. An affected entity has +2 bonus to its spell attack rolls and spell difficulty class for each remaining turn. Arcane Synergy, in my opinion, is probably better for this because we're not doing tons of spell damage. Because remember, a smite is not a spell. This is a really good alternative one that you can go with, and it simply just keys off of doing weapon damage, which is very nice. Other good things are just simply like Fistbreaker Helmet, bonus to initiative, spell save DC, even the Hood of the Weave if you want to lean into some of the spell casting stuff. The Flawed Helldusk Helmet, just use whatever helmet you like that you find and stick with it. You can go with heavy armor because we've respec'd to Paladin, right? So heavy armor is an option for you. Go ahead and jump into it. For our cloaks, go with the Thunderskin Cloak. When a creature with reverb deals damage to the wearer, the creature needs to make a Constitution saving throw or become dazed. We have the other one that does, so we have basically, when people hit us, they're going to be either dazed or stunned. Or just taking tons of luminous damage. But they have disadvantage on wisdom saving throws, can't take reactions, and lose a dexterity bonus to their armor class. Great little ability here. Other options are Cloak of the Weave for some spell save DC and some survivability, Cloak of Protection for some additional survivability early in the game. For our main chest piece, we have the Armor of the Spore Keeper because we are a Spore Druid. The wearer gains +1 spell save DC when dealing necrotic damage. They deal when dealing necrotic damage. comma, they deal an additional 1 necrotic damage. So it's nice. It's a nice way to do this. But basically, the big thing here we want is Symbiotic Entity, giving us this. Haste Spores to give you haste, Bibberbang Spores to do damage, or the Tiamosk Spores to befuddle creatures. So it's just a nice way to add a ton of additional utility into the build, and I really, really like this way of playing. Other chest pieces, though, can be the early Spider Silk Armor for Constitution saving throw advantage, and for stealth bonus, you can use rare, light, medium, whatever it is until you want to focus onto something else. Even the Armor of Agility later in the game gives you a really high AC, and you can pull in the bonus of your Dexterity if you're using the Gloves of Dexterity. Speaking of gloves, I have on the flawed Helldust gloves. I think that using stuff that gives you additional damage modifiers to your build is very nice. The gloves of dexterity are helpful because of initiative and AC, but I like this because it's just more flat damage increase to the build. Other stuff though, bracers of defense if you want to go no armor route. I don't know why I put those there. But the gloves, the battle mage's power. When a weapon attack inflicts a condition, the wielder gains arcane acuity. And we've talked about this before. That's +1 spell save, or I'm sorry, spell attack rolls and difficulty class. Also, even just something simple like the Legacy of the Masters, gain a +2 bonus to attack and damage rolls with this weapon. Or later in the game, you have just the straight up Helldust gloves. Here, just these guys. Again, you gain a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls and spell save DC, and now you have 1 to 6 fire damage increase. Also get Rays of Fire and strength saving throws +1. So a great weapon, or a great choice you can go with later in the game if you so wish. Over into our other options here, for our boots, I just simply have on the Boots of Persistence. They give you freedom of movement and long shredder, but use whatever boots are good mobility boots for you. Boots of Striding if you're concentrating. You can't be knocked prone with those two. Disintegrating Night Stalk Walkers are always a good one. Even just as Boots of Speed. I always recommend the boots option to be what you have room for in your party. Sometimes I feel like all 4 of these boots are ones that are like interchanged around parties, so choose whatever makes sense for you. For your necklace, Khaled's Will is nice because it gives us 1 more wisdom. So if you missed out on the Hag's Hair, you can go with this. There's also other ways to get stat points in Act 3, which I won't talk about for spoiler reasons, but you can take advantage of those as well. Put those into Charisma or to Wisdom. Other things, though, are the Amulet of Greater Health. If you don't have another character that has that needs this, then pop it on. Now your character's got max Dex, max Constitution, tons of Wisdom. You're good to go. Use the Amulet of Restoration for healing, Moondrop Pendant early for some survivability, Amulet of the Harpers for advantage on Wisdom saving throws and shield, Spell Restoration from Spell Crux, and Amulet of Misty Step. All really great options you can't go wrong with. For your rings, I like the Killer Sweetheart for auto crits and the Ring of Regeneration for some healing. But then there's some good stuff like the Corsair Ring. When the wearer deals spell damage while illuminated by a light source, they inflict Radiating Orb upon the target. So you use this in conjunction with the Luminous Glow ring, right? Because you're illuminating everything. The things you hit and yourself. So you get this benefit all the time. It's really nice. In fact, I'll drop it on there. Shapeshifter's Boon, that's only for shapeshifting, but it does help out with that. The Whispering Promise, that's for healing. Movement Speed for Crusher's Ring, and Ring of Free Action here, so that you ignore the effects of difficult terrain and cannot be paralyzed or restrained. And that's the wrong ring. So that concludes our equipment. It's pretty straightforward. It's a lot of really, again, comes down to whatever you have access to. It's why I like this build, like I said before, is it's a very much a build that's open to you, regardless of what you've picked up throughout the game. You can just simply use it, which is very nice. But jumping into combat here, let's take a look at how this character actually performs. Now, I will say it is a little dumb. My character's dual wielding 2 torches. It's just ridiculous, right? But it's still pretty fun. So you can see here, we've got quite a bit of damage turned on. We have Symbiotic Entity turned on. We took a little bit of damage. You do have to know that if you take too much damage, you'll lose Symbiotic Entities. You'll have to cast it multiple times. But we've got some options here. We can do our Vow of Enmity here, cast it on myself. I used a Potion of Haste to give myself an extra little bit of action here in this turn. But also, to keep in mind, there's plenty of potions you can use, like the Elixir of Battle Mage's Power, the Elixir of Viciousness to help out with critical hits, the Elixir of Bloodlust is a good one, a lot of fun elixirs. You can even go with Strength and kind of switch into 2-handed weapons if you want. But let's go ahead and see this still works here. So Vow of Enmity is up. That should give us advantage, which is great. So let's go ahead and just take a swing. And let's take a look at what that did. So that was just one swing at 13, 7, 6, 13, 7, and 6. Now, I have unfortunately used my bonus action, so I'm not dual wielding both of these weapons, which is just a bad move on my part. But we're going to go ahead and do a smite here. I forgot to turn it on via the dialog box. So let's take a look at that smite. 14, 10, 6, and 21. That is a lot of damage, and we didn't even dual wield. So in the next turn, I can take advantage of full dual wielding. We can do Bibberbang Spores over here. We can do a cool Thorn Whip. So let's go ahead and do like a nifty Thorn Whip if we can. Well, I know. Let's just go do more damage. What am I saying here? What am I saying here? Let's just jump up into that cookie jar over here. And we have level 4 smites. Let's just take a look at level 3 smite to give you a different sense of what it might be. Yeah, let's just do that. Boom! 16, 15, 14, and 43 all with a critical hit. Again, we'll do another. Let's do a 4. Let's do a 4. Let's have some fun. Boom! And that's 14, 7, 7, and 27. If I had had a bonus attack, I would have used my other hand to do damage in that as well. So that would have been additional damage with our smites to have even more fun. Just make sure when you do get your smites that you turn on all these capabilities here. So that way the game is going to ask you, hey, you hit something. Did you actually want to turn it into a smite? Or hey, you critical hit something. Did you want to turn it into a smite? Just make sure you click that little dialog box right here to bring all those up, and you make sure you trigger them. So you can see that this class has a lot of really fun options at its disposal. A lot of really cool spells that it can take advantage of too. It has a lot of fun utility. But the most important thing is that you are strong from the start of the game up until this point. And you've seen what I've done here with my Arcane Acuity helmet on. Well, now I have 10 stacks of Arcane Acuity. So I get a plus 10 to spell attack rolls and spell difficulty class. So it's really unlikely that stuff is going to be resisted for me. Can I see? Yeah, because I'm rolling at a plus 21 for my stuff here. And plus 23 for my wisdom. So my spell attacks are going to rip and grip. So if I kind of been a little bit cleverer, I could have put Moonbeam on here and that probably would have gone through. We have tons of stuff that's really going to help us with spell attack and DC rolls to make sure they actually hit our targets that we can have a little bit of fun with. And you also have Halo Spores as a reaction you can use. Doesn't really do a lot of damage, but hey, it's there, right? 3 and 4, whatever, I'll take it. Petrified him into nothing. So have fun with this build, but there's a lot of different ways to approach it. I didn't use any quarterstaves because I wanted to show how simple two torches can be and how effective they can be. But maybe you've done this and transitioned over to a two-handed weapon build. Or maybe you've done this and you've mixed, instead of Paladin, you've done Fighter. There's a lot of different ways to approach it. This is a very popular build. So go ahead and let me know in the comment section below how you have approached this Spore Druid hybrid build to have a lot of fun in the early game while still staying strong throughout the rest of the game. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.